had to learn what goes on, the amount of work that goes on before a feature documentary. This was only 3 minutes, but it was enough. And we did like weeks and weeks and weeks of how you find the person to interview who has an interesting story. And then there's loads of things that you need to think about. How to build rapport with them and things like that. And so I did, I was working on one woman who just dropped out at the last minute. And at the time, the person who I was going to film was in London. I lived 3 hours away from London. So I took away from the weekend, I took the camera, I got a cameraman with me.
Yes.
And all ready to go. The minute she kind of like saw me with the recording or even notes, and I spoke with her many times because we had many meetings. That's how you do it properly. You get to know each other.
Yes.
And then she didn't want to talk about it. So she said she dropped out. And I said, fuck, I need to have a film in the can, so to speak, by the end of Sunday. And it was Friday.
Yeah.
So I had a friend of mine, my ex, whose girlfriend was from Japan, but she lived in New York, and she was there. She was a dancer. She was there in London, just like she was leaving on Saturday morning. I had a pre-interview chat on the phone at midnight. Yeah, come tomorrow morning while she was preparing her bags to go back to New York.
Wow.
I interviewed her. And like 2 hours tapes I had, and I had to cut it down 2 minutes and 59 seconds or something like that. It's like, but I did it, and I ended up the story is a bit strange. I want to show it. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
It's like just a video diary, just interviewing her, you know. And but that story actually sold her a lot. She found a lot of gigs. Like she managed to get a gig with a dance company at the Edinburgh Festival that year. So it was basically, because she was an artist, I made a story where you talk about her ordeal, her challenge, and how she...
Hang on a second, I think we got some people joining us here.
Oh my God.
Can we give some context to what we're talking about really quick?
Yeah.
And then I'll introduce you.
Yeah. So basically... Oh, I lost it now. So basically, when I what was I saying? I lost my thread now.
You had an interview.
Yeah.
You talked to her the night before.
She's got like in the story, there's a bit of an introduction about her and the ordeal that she was, a challenge that she had. She was 26 at the time, and I'm not going to say anything because it's not apparent until halfway through the video. And then she talks about how she overcame her challenge, and how she got into dance even more. And basically my stories are from challenges to overcoming your problems, the
hero's journey, essentially.
The hero's journey.
I mean, that's like,
it is.
You know, Okay, so today we got Roxana here in the garden. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Roxana is very interesting. A very interesting character. She's European, all over Europe. I know she spent a lot of time in Italy. You're Italian?
Originally, I'm from Italy.
Yes.
But I spent the biggest part of my life in England.
So, like most Europeans, you can speak 58 languages, I'm guessing?
Yeah, just 2 languages and 2 dialects.
Two languages and 2 dialects.
And a bit of Spanish.
Okay,
yes.
So, living up to the European positive stereotypes, right?
That's the stereotypes of Europeans. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, I think so. They all speak. I mean, it makes sense. It's amazing how isolated the populations of the offshoots of the Roman Empire, right? Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Italy, Germany, Britain, and so forth. They're isolated enough that Latin actually changed. And the amount of time it took to do that, where now, if you speak French, so to me, as an Anglophone, French and Spanish are almost the same. They're almost the same.
The pronunciation is very different.
Italian and Spanish are almost the same.
Yeah, well, they're all Latin languages. And Bulgarian? No. There's another... Romanian, that's it.
Yeah.
Which is completely different.
Right. So that's another Latin language. And I mean, they had enough time separate for them to differentiate enough so that one of our friends here in Mexico can't understand a friggin' word of French.
Well, they can't understand even Italian. I mean, as an Italian, I understand a lot of the words that they're saying because the pronunciation is slightly different, apart from false friends like esperar, because esperar in Spanish is to wait.
Yes.
In Italian, it means to hope. So, but the sound
It's
is
like
different.
related to the English, well, Latin-based English word aspire.
Yeah.
So the Italian,
aspirare.
the Italian meaning is similar to the English meaning.
It's got
if
two
I'm
meanings.
aspiring for something, I'm hoping for it.
Yeah, it's the same, but it also means to suck.
Oh, that's
The vacuum cleaner aspira. Aspira.
okay.
Aspirare. That's inspirare, però.
And then you have perspire, which
Perspirare.
is something
What's in Spanish?
we get familiar with here in these tropical climates.
Yes.
What's that in Spanish?
What? Perspire.
Yeah.
Sudar.
Sugar.
Sudar.
Sudar.
I think it's like that. Yeah, in Italian it's sudare. So I
They have
kind
such
of
proud-sounding words, you know.
Yeah.
It's funny, right? Because it does, when you just hear the word and you're like, oh, that's a nice arrangement of letters. For example,
Sound.
when I first heard the word basura.
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 And it's like,
La
that's a
basura.
neat sounding word. What's that mean? They're like, garbage. That means garbage.
You mean
And
rubbish?
it's like, what a waste of a great word.
Rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a waste. Couldn't you, use a different word? That
Basura.
word's too cool for
Basura.
that. But that's the thing is Latin's full of cool words.
Yeah, I have a favorite word in every language that I speak. I like. Have you got a favorite word in Spanish?
Well, I say potentemente for potentially, which I'm not sure is correct
Potencialmente. I
or
don't
not.
know.
Potentemente.
I don't know in Spanish.
And I like
Potencialmente.
solamente.
Solamente.
Solamente. I love the way that sounds.
Solamente. I like the
And
word.
they just say solo. They go, oh no, solo.
Solo,
But I like
solo.
saying the full. I like
Solamente.
saying solamente.
Solo. Pero solo means I'm on my own.
Yeah.
Soy solo, not solamente. So it can be both.
It's a little different, eh?
My favorite Spanish word is suave.
Suave for
Suave.
smooth, baby.
Yeah.
You a Luis Miguel fan?
No.
No?
No.
You
I don't
know-
even
you know
know
who
his
he
songs.
is?
Vaguely, yeah, but I don't.
Oh, you know what? You got to get to know Luis Miguel because I guarantee you will become a fan. No one is immune from Luis Miguel.
Okay.
And fun fact, he used to hang out in Zihuatanejo often and has
Ah.
properties here.
Wow. Have you been to one of them?
Well, we're going to find out where one of them is, hopefully with an interview with our friend Daniel,
Oh, yeah.
the restaurateur and the you could say native of Ziwa.
Yeah,
He grew up
he's-
here. He was involved with Jacques Cousteau.
Yeah.
Steve
Well,
Zissou had a
the
big
head.
influence here too. Or
cameraman.
Zissou, I don't know the Jacques Cousteau story. I admit I was
I do.
more into the rainforest guys.
So Jacques Cousteau actually is not involved in this. It was one of his cameramen, Owen Lee, who just came to Ziwa and fell in love after he retired from being Jacques Cousteau's cameraman. I believe that, I don't know if it was him. He had a handful of cameramen, but
Yeah.
one of them was like the best underwater. I think it was him, Owen Lee, the best underwater cameraman. And he found this beautiful place in Las Gatas, the edge of it, and he just bought a property, and I think it was a bit like an open space where people could learn how to live in nature.
yes.
Yeah. And then he died a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, and I met some Italian friends who live in Ziwa, been here for like 15 years, and they told me the other day, yes, we went and we well, I shouldn't say it, scattered the ashes,
Oh, yeah.
which is not something that you can do, but they did it.
What do you mean you can't do that?
Apparently it's not legal.
It's not legal
It's
to
not
scatter it.
legal from the
From
yeah,
who?
legalese. Yeah, exactly. From who?
People scatter ashes
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Americans, Canadians.
Exactly.
It's illegal? Like, is that a Mexican Catholic
Apparently.
holdover?
Apparently.
Must be a Catholic
Yeah,
thing.
it's kind of mafia stuff. Nah, it's just
Mafia stuff.
yeah.
Well, it's one of those, like, unenforceable rules, like a power trip rule.
Yeah.
you know, like the no jaywalking kind of thing.
I mean, if you think about it, ashes are actually disinfectants.
Yeah.
They use them to wash dishes, apparently.
Really? Well, I know it's a carbon. It's abrasive, and it's going to absorb toxins, just like taking a carbon supplement.
Yeah.
You know, when you
Yeah,
got stomach problems, it absorbs poison, and
I drink to that.
carbon is carbon is carbon. Whether it comes from a tree, a foot,
He's agreeing.
a cucaracha.
Cucaracha. That's,
What are they called again?
I can't remember. They make some really weird sounds. It's not
They're-
cucaracha. It's
It's like a cucaracha. I can't remember the. I say cucaracha. It's not cucaracha. It's
What
a
do
word
they
like
call
that, but they're these big.
I call
Chickens.
them tyrannosaurs
Yeah,
because they
they're
look like them.
chickens. And I think they're
Dinosaurs.
actually ancient chickens.
They are
They're just
dinosaurs.
non-domesticated chickens.
The way they move is like
Yeah.
dinosaurs. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So they're
So-
big birds. Maybe I'll show. I have a few clips of them. Maybe I'll cut it in when we're talking about it right
Oh,
now.
good. Yeah.
So people know what the hell
Yeah.
we're talking about,
Yeah.
and not just sitting here drinking mushroom tea.
It's really nice. I like it.
So
Very
tell me about your younger days in Europe.
younger
Where did
days.
you grow up?
I grew up in Italy,
Yes.
and I've always wanted to go to England. Maybe in another life. Well, I
What
know
part of
that
Italy? Italy is not that small.
Italy is, yeah. I was born in the northwest, a place called
Oh, fancy.
Genova.
That's fancy Italy,
yeah,
right?
it is fancy. It's
That's
next
not
to the south
racist
of
for me to
France.
say that.
No, it's a nice place.
Yeah.
It's in the north, but I'm a mixture of north and south. My mum was from the Alps, further up the Alps, and my dad was from the south. Two completely different cultures,
Yeah.
completely different
And then
diets,
it's
everything.
Sicily is even another culture too,
Yeah,
isn't it?
every region
it
is
not?
a culture.
Yeah.
Every region is different, but the north and south, especially, is very. The south of Italy is much more similar to Mexico, but Mexico is better because if you go to the south of Italy, especially outside big cities, everything is geared towards the family. Everything is about kids, whereas here, at least, they love dancing and
Yes.
getting quite loose in their dancing, whereas in the north they're more like the north of Italy is more like the north of Europe. The mentality is colder, it's supposed to be wealthier, but it's not. I discovered
Kids are to be silent
late-
or beaten.
well, I know. Nowadays things are different. To me, being here, it's like being in Italy in the 70s. It's very similar, and I like that. And it feels like being in my hometown because you've got the Cerro, you've got the hills, you've got the sea, well, it's the ocean.
Yes.
So it's sunny and it's warm. Although in Italy it's not always sunny and warm
Is it
because it can be cold.
even in the south?
In the south, maybe apart from places like Sicily, where it's always warm, in the south you can be. In the north you can you have the Alps. There's cold, it's proper seasons, and it can be colder than England. So when I went to England, I couldn't wait to go. I was quite young, and I went to England, and then I was going to learn a bit of English.
Excellent.
So
Which
for
you
like
seem to have
4 weeks,
accomplished.
I was supposed to be there for 4 weeks, and then I threw the ticket away, and I didn't go back. So, and then I ended up learning, studying English at university, because it was always in my blood.
Right.
So, but I have lived my own personal diaspora because.
So how old were you when you left Italy?
20.
You're 20.
Yeah.
So just a youngin' still.
Yeah.
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 And what were the borders like back then? Was it pretty open? Was it hard for you to get in?
No,
to
it's
England?
open because the EU. I didn't have to have any visa. I didn't need anything. They didn't even look at my passport. Actually, no. The very first time, they stamped my passport.
Ah.
But after that, that's why I was so against Brexit. But maybe it was a good thing. I don't know.
I'm an opinionated person. However, if I don't know the issues, I think it's better to not have an opinion and let the Brits have an opinion, let the Europeans have an opinion, because I'm a Canadian.
Right.
I don't really understand what it accomplished and what it took away. I don't know. I thought England was always its own country.
Yeah.
What is it? Different paperwork you show at the border, or people are Czechoslovakians just not allowed in England anymore, or
Oh no,
or
a lot of people
Brit
are
can't
allowed.
go to Germany to work. Like what is the difference between? Okay, so the problems with the EU and England being a part of it, which as a citizen, I don't want to be under the dominion of foreign unelected officials.
Yeah.
Philosophically.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm not even talking about
that's the
England. I'm
issue.
not talking about the EU. Just in principle, I don't like the idea of lawmakers from France telling me what I can and can't do when I live in Bolivia. Okay,
Exactly.
like that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But I do believe in the right of mobility.
Yeah.
I think borders, and here's the thing that I was thinking of the other day, and tell me if I'm full of it, but how about this? How about borders only exist for governments?
Exactly.
Borders don't exist for citizens. As soon as you become a politician, now borders matter to you.
Yeah.
Because that's your jurisdiction.
Yeah. Exactly.
But otherwise, they're
Precisely.
imaginary lines that mean nothing.
Exactly. Absolutely. I agree.
People
with you
should be able to go
completely.
and leave as they please anywhere
Yeah.
they want, or at least what they can afford to.
And the digital passport and the CBDC should belong only to politicians, because they should be accountable
Yep.
for all the money that our money that we, well, you know, so far that
I have a strong, what would you say, like, the simple way of saying it would be like, oh, you're rebellious and you don't like authority. And it's like wrong and also wrong again. You're wrong.
you're wrong.
I dislike arbitrary authority. And I will not participate in what I believe to be nonsensical and stupid rule sets that exist just to elevate one at the expense of another.
Exactly.
I won't participate in that.
Yeah.
I don't see the reason to line up like cattle for slaughter when we're in school. The bell rings, you go in the door. We're perfectly capable of walking in the door. We don't have to line up like we're being selected
That's
at a
grooming.
concentration camp.
That's grooming.
Exactly. And, I responded very strongly with that. I don't know if it's epigenetic memories or something. Because I was like, I will not line up like that.
Yeah.
I will not stand in line like some kind of animal. I won't do it. And I never did. I got in trouble a lot when I was a kid. I didn't even understand why. I postulate now that it's genetic memory, that it's some kind of defense mechanism from being on the not so fortunate side of tyranny at certain parts in my ancestral history. And that it happened and it was so severe. For something to ingrain itself into your epigenetic memory, that is something like being scared of snakes or insects or falling out of a tree. You have a dream about falling out? Excuse me. Ever had a dream of falling out of a tree? Most people have.
Yeah.
That's an epigenetic memory from being a formerly arboreal. We have a lineage of arboreal dwelling ancestors.
That's right.
And falling out of a tree is not something you want to do because it's going to kill you. So what you do, as Mother Nature designed it, dreams may have other purposes that we don't fully understand, but one of the strongest ones, and a theory that I subscribe to very strongly, is that dreams allow us to play out a simulated reality from which we can encounter a situation that we may not encounter in real life that could be dangerous or scary or whatever, and be able to run through it. So when we encounter it in real life, we don't freeze up and just die or panic.
And yet, this is the ultimate simulated reality.
Right.
This is a dream.
Yeah.
And more and more recently, I've been walking around thinking, my God, my nervous system is adjusting to something different because I'm aware in real time that this is a dream. Because I'm working, I've been meditating a lot about this, and I'm feeling it. I feel like I'm making it all up. You are me. You is me, But I wanted to say about something about being rebel at school. I was like that, but in a covert way. I was the quiet rebel.
Right.
And because I went to school with nuns for a little bit, and so I had to be more subtle and elegant.
So is
But I was a rebel.
in southern Italy, it would have been a very Catholic.
Oh, in the north. I grew up in the north, so.
Oh, you're in the
yeah,
north. Okay. So,
Which is very
what
different.
what is the what are the politics like in Italy when you're growing up? Is it conservative, fascist, tyrannical, nice?
We had like, I don't know, 25 different parties.
'Cause
Yeah, and
just
it's
for
all
your
about
information,
coalitions,
Canadians-
Christian.
Canadians don't know a goddamn thing about Italy. We're not taught anything.
All you
Zero.
need to know is that Italy is one of the most, if not the most diverse territory in the whole world. It's the
Well,
richest.
it was the seat of the empire.
Well, yeah, but
I do
like,
know that.
on a geological level, vegetable level, you know, the flora and the fauna as well. Even the autochthonous, indigenous people in Italy. I discovered this is about
There's
the people that are
indigenous
quite.
Italians.
Yeah,
Like you're
there's
not
something
is that
it's like it's the biggest variety of indigenous races in Italy, without counting people coming from outside.
right?
Although we all come from outside at some point because we migrated from, I
course.
believe, about the story about Africa. But just indigenous people are so different, and because the terrain, every region has a different terrain. So there's a different way of relating to the earth. There's a different culture. There's a different language. Everything is different. Like even my region, which is called Liguria, from east to west, it's called the geologist's dream because the rocks are completely different from east to west. It's
Oh,
just
wow.
incredible because of the position right in the middle of the Mediterranean.
Isn't there a fault line there? Volcanoes, anything like that?
Yeah, in the south.
Is there a subduction
Yeah.
zone?
There's Etna and Vesuvio. Vesuvio is near Naples, and yes, but the Etna is pretty going. It's like
So it's a
continuously
geologically
erupting.
active area,
Yeah.
which gives you that.
Yeah, yeah.
And-
There's so much history there. There's
And
so
then you
much.
have the fact that it's a giant peninsula, I guess.
Yeah, the
you could
perfect
say.
weather is it's never rough. The weather is never rough, you know. So the winds are really, so you get all sort of flora and fauna, and but the thing is one of the richest country in the world in terms of all these things, but has always been the most corrupted because we have the Vatican, even though it's a state unto itself, but that's where the mafia is.
Yeah, they are very good at whatever they're doing because no one really knows the amount of power that the Vatican has and has had throughout history.
Yeah.
I mean, in history, we all know.
Yeah.
We've seen the shows. I watched the Borgia. Yeah, want to see a great dramatic series? Borgia. I think it's called The Borgia or Borgia. It was not the biggest show, but the acting in it's just tremendous. It's a fantastic historical show, and it does not paint any pictures of the Vatican this way or that way. I think it's a very honest representation of the history of that time. It shows Pope what was his name? Rodrigo.
That sounds
Borgia.
Spanish.
Yeah, well, he was a Catalan.
Yeah, they're all intermarried and
Yeah. Well, he had a lot of opposition to become pope because he was Catalan. He was seen as an outsider. That's an interesting story on itself, but it also showed how he became addicted to opiates, semi-accidentally, but it was like, when someone's like a Hollywood actor goes on a drug bender, and then paparazzis catch him like running naked in a public park, high out of their mind, like embarrassing stuff. So it had that in it. It had like where he was high and he like walked out into public naked, and people are like, is that Borgia? Is that the Pope? And then, his men come in real quick and, like, put a towel on him and carry him back inside, and then no one hears from him for 5 months.
Yeah.
Because he's strung out. He's completely addicted to opiates.
Yeah.
They don't even know what it is. They're like, oh, it's my medicine. I need my medicine.
No, you just reminded me of Orson Welles in The Third Man when he talks about the Italians with the Borgias and all the, the family of Borgias. Was this famous woman called Lucrezia. She used to keep the poison in her ring. Well, people used to do that at the time. And Orson Welles says, well, look at the Italians, they're all corrupted and all these dramas, but they created this, that, and the other. But look at the Swiss. What did they do? Everything is perfect, but what did they create? The cuckoo's clock. I don't know if you...
The Swiss made the cuckoo clock.
Yeah.
I got my cat here just coming to say hi. Hi, eyeballs. Want to say hi?
Cats rule. They're just so sovereign. They're such sovereign. I love their nature. And
so this is Eyeballs. He's our rescue cat. There is a video about him that people can watch, but he grew up to be such a sweet boy. He's so affectionate and loves the attention. He doesn't really have boundaries.
Yeah. And
right now he's like, oh look, they're recording a show. I'm gonna get involved here.
Of course. And cats. Come over here. Eyeballs.
Want to say hi to Roxana, Mr. Balls?
Eyeballs. Eyeballs.
So the Swiss made the cuckoo clock. What's that about? I mean,
it's. I guess it's like. That's all they're famous for. Yeah. I mean, look at one thing, because I always because
they're famous for chocolate, but chocolate comes from Mexico.
Yeah, but isn't that interesting that the best chocolates and the best coffee is made outside of Mexico? I mean, they grow coffee, but nobody can make coffees like the Italians.
The scarcity and the novelty is lost on when it's something that just grows around you all the time.
Possibly. Taken for granted.
Yeah.
Well, I mean...
Like avocados, for me as a Canadian, are just...
Oh, yeah.
I just love them. It's not a millennial thing. They're legitimately a superfood, and they're delicious.
They are.
And
I remember when I didn't like them, and my mum forced me to eat them. Now I love them.
Yeah, it's strange. It's got a flavor to it that... I eat them like apples now.
It's an acquired.
Like I don't even... Yeah.
You don't even peel them anymore.
I just eat the skin.
Yeah. No, but I've always lagged Italy off since I've been, all those years in England. And now I kind of, like, being outside of Europe, I miss the elegance of the architecture going around. And even though England is very different. I mean, Britain, talking about the EU and all the politics, Britain, even though when it was part of the EU, it's a different beast. Everything, people say in the continent is the rest of Europe, and then there's Britain. And they go, yeah, but the British, they call it the English just go on the wrong side of the road, and they think everybody else goes on the wrong side of the road.
That's right, yeah, they drive on the left.
And they're a different beast because they are twinned with, London is twinned with New York, so they are a bridge between Europe and America.
Right.
So they've never integrated.
Toronto and London are very much, umbilically connected in a way. I noticed when I was working in television production, we go into the production office for our pre-production meetings for like a haunted house show or something. Nothing too spectacular, but I remember it was like the head guy, like the exec or the CEO, was always this young British guy. And I'm like, this is strange. Yeah. They just like pull these guys out of London and then plant them in Toronto. Yeah. He was, perfectly, that industry, it's strange because there's some jobs that you just, like his job, like he was in the meeting. I don't know what he did. He's like,
Just
right,
like,
so
"Whoa,
looks like you got
whoa."
this all taken care of. Excellent. Like, and then
Excellent.
left and got up and left. And he's like, I guess, and then he went on vacation. So, I don't know. They're
No
just
idea.
check writers. He just writes the checks, I guess. He sits in his office and writes
They're
paychecks.
loaded. They're probably, coming from the city.
Yeah, well,
loaded
I saw it often. There was an
Yeah.
English director on a big production, which was a McDonald's commercial.
Right.
Was an English so-called comedy director. I wish
Who was that?
I wish I could remember his name. I mean, a lot of these, when they're doing these commercials, it's like they're on their way, but they're in the beginning of their career, so they probably made a funny short film that won an award in England, and
Yeah.
then they get directing jobs on commercials like the new Egg McMuffin, and then a guy in his house coat, walking around in the city, and it's hilarious because he's in his house coat. Wow, but
Yeah.
it's dumb stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I know there's a lot. There's a lot of English
Yeah.
guys coming over from London
Yeah.
and working in Toronto in the film industry, and none of them are working their way up. They all come in and they're at the top, which is interesting. So there's definitely a very strong. I'm
Yeah.
not saying there's anything wrong with that either. By the way, I'm just
No.
It's just.
But it's just there's a
pointing out that
pattern. There's a pattern.
there's an umbilical.
Yeah.
They probably wanted to go to New York,
Yeah.
and then
A lot of people working in the film industry in London 90% of the work is there.
yeah,
For the whole country. So they all go to America because it's very crowded in London. And in fiction in Britain it's different because you can produce and direct your own films. Usually.
So we're getting to that. Let's go back. So you're in England, So you left Italy. You went to England. What did you get up to in England? You went there for school. You were saying.
I went there because of music. I've always got interested in music. I used to spend all my teenager years in radio stations. Best way to get close to music. So people still nowadays in Europe, they look up at the youth culture in England. And London is the place to go.
Is. Even to this day, these guys, the London scene has been trend-setting.
Yeah.
Or,
It's
in
nothing
all
like it used to
genres
be.
too, which is interesting.
I got there in the 80s, and
Yeah.
already it was too late. I should have gone in the 60s, but I wasn't able to do that. I was born too late. But the 50s and 60s, I used to squat around the corner from where David Bowie grew up. Well, was born, and then he grew up in it further south, but London. But for me, that was like the youth culture. So I went for the music.
Yes.
And when I got to London, I actually gradually disconnected from the music I knew because I got involved with the whole subculture of indigenous music in the south of London. South London is...
Indigenous?
Well, indigenous, like London has any ethnicity apart from North Korea. There's
Okay.
people from everywhere.
Yeah.
So there's so much music. And people said, oh, there's an area in London called Brixton where it became famous because David Bowie was born there, and so it
I wonder how
became
many of my
famous when he
relatives
died.
you've met, because I have
But
hundreds in London.
In the 80s, Brixton was kind of a ghetto, but West Indian people used to live there, still live there. It's West Indian.
What's that mean, West Indian?
West Indian Jamaican people, black.
Ah, okay. Oh,
And
right. That's
there were a
Marley
lot-
went there, and
There were a lot of
Peter
riots.
Tosh, and
Yeah, everyone. Yeah, I mean, even Sting later on, he was squatting in Brixton. But at the beginning of the 20th century, Brixton was in the outskirts of London, so it was a genteel, suburb where people used to go on holiday. South of the river. So there is this big divide, the north of the Thames and south of the Thames, and there are actually kitchen sinks. Do you know kitchen sinks genre? It
like
became
washboard, like
well,
that was
kitchens.
in the 60s.
Yeah,
Like, I know
like
that from-
50s. No, in the 50s, the kind of realism
Or
of
skiffle.
Britain was called kitchen sink.
Oh.
It was like in the wake of when you study film school in Britain, you learn a lot about Italian realism because it's really famous. But on the sort of slipstream of that, in the 60s, well, yeah, like 58, 59, they started doing that in Britain. So it was a lot about films about the working class in London or in England, you know. And there's a famous film called A Taste of Honey, which was made in 1959, which is the most famous kitchen sink. Anyway, I'm getting digressed there. So there was, and in A Taste of Honey, South of the River was another film where they talked about what life was like in the late 50s south of the river. No white people used to go, or no local people. They were all like immigrants, you know. So, and actually there were local people, but it was the working class. It was like a ghetto. So in the 80s, there was this big warfare, kind of civil warfare. So there were a lot of riots in Brixton. And I was quite new. By the time I got there, it was almost at the tail end of these warfare things. People said, don't go to Brixton because it's a rough area. Okay, let's go to Brixton. So that's where I made my first friends, actually. And I started squatting, and they were all musicians. I used to work in theatre at the time. I was a mime artist. Right. So I got involved with people in the arts, and there were people from everywhere. There was this guy called Hans from East Berlin. Mm-hmm. He managed to escape from East Berlin, climbing the wall.
Oh wow!
You know,
okay,
in the
80s. East Berlin was behind the wall. Was the communist part of Germany, and that was controlled by the Soviet Union or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, that's something that we didn't learn very much about, and I'm going to say that a lot about how much of a failure the Canadian so-called education system is. I will be unrelenting in that. So once again, I will bring up that lack of knowledge. In fact, it's interesting to me, and sorry to digress for a second here. The longer that I spend here we're in Mexico, I realize how institutionalized I really am. You know, I always thought, well, I'm rebellious. I don't like authority. You know, like I'm okay. But then I, you know, I look back and I realize there's these gaps in my. We don't know anything about Mexico. We don't know anything about Europe, really. Not a lot, anyway. Unless you go out and learn on your own, which thankfully I did do. But if I was completely reliant on what I learned in school, I'd be a donkey. Yeah. And that's why, you know, a lot of, you have these like walk up to the person on the street and ask them questions like, can you find, Yugoslavia on a map? And then they hold a map there and they're like, duh. And it's like, well, no wonder they don't know where it is. Our school systems are so bad. They're so bad. They're useless. Pull your kids out of school. They're better off playing with their and having. I mean, kids should learn from adults, not other children. But you think the adults that are teaching in schools now, you think they could consider them adults? Look at what they're getting paid. Look at their benefits. As in, they're getting paid very little. They have no benefits. Things have changed. Maybe in the 80s it was a good job and like it was decently high paying. So what happens is a funny thing. When you pay people a lot of money, you incentivize high quality people to take that job. And you incentivize competition for those jobs. If those jobs don't pay good money anymore and the benefits are taken away, what kind of people do you think you're going to attract? Yeah. And then what is one of the most important jobs in society, arguably, is preparing the next generation to take the torch and build something great. Yeah. How are they going to do that when the lowest quality people are the ones that are teaching them? Because that's job why we're here. Yeah.
We are here. We're the last bastion of freedom.
Yeah.
We're starting a new golden age.
Well, I mean, the more I look at it now, and I mean, it wasn't overtly a propaganda brainwash machine when I was growing up, but then now I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, wait, maybe it was.
Having said that, I have the same thing. We're not taught much about, nothing about Canada.
Well, Canada is
the US,
shameful satellite. Canada is an embarrassment of a country. It's a backwater. It was established by criminals from England that went there to make quick money on fur pelts. These were guys that were hard hard men. I respect them a lot for being able to, and a lot of them were explorers.
Maybe they
and
were
that was
used
cool.
as well, people,
Well, of course, but Canada is it's not a real country. It never really separated from England. It's still not separated from English control. It's like a banana republic that's pretending to be we're just like England. We're just like
your monetary system has changed. They've got the king now.
Has it? Yeah. Does it have the king?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't looked at Canadian money in a long time. I haven't seen any. It's got the king now, right? Why? Why does Canadian money have the king?
I think so.
I'm sorry. I don't remember us being a monarchy, but evidently we are. Are we or are we not? And why is this guy on our money? What has he ever accomplished in his life? Is he a great king?
God.
Is he a hero? Is he a war hero? Like kings of past that earned the respect they were given? I don't think so. I haven't heard a single good thing about the guy.
You're talking about
King of England.
Oh, the King of England, King Charles III.
Yeah.
It was really funny. It was really funny when they were when he
is he eloquent?
When his mother died and all the politicians were doing their promise their allegiance. They all said King Charles. They didn't say King Charles III. They all said King Charles. So it's all like a vow that means nothing because he's not King Charles. He's the third Charles, not the first. Which is, big difference.
Yeah, and
he's not funny. He's.
I saw a short video clip of him, which he looks like a spoiled asshole. Essentially, it was like when he was signing some bill, right? And he goes to sign it, and the pen, I guess, didn't work. It was a shitty pen, and it ran out of ink. And he goes like this. He's like.
Yeah.
And you could tell he was about to lose his fucking mind and start yelling like he normally does because I know that behavior. I've worked for people like that. And he just controls himself just enough because he knows he's on camera.
Yeah.
He knows he's on camera. So he goes, and it was like, I know that hostility, that like, he was like that. Yeah. Like he made this like expression like, and looks at someone like it's their fault the pen ran out of ink. Like that is that instant right there, that half a second of behavior. It's like I got a good read on what this guy's like.
Well, it's quite famous the fact that he was a very big friend of Jimmy Savile. Do you know?
Oh, very
this guy was Mr. P.
a beacon of
morality.
Yes.
And actually, I recently discovered that Diana was trying to because. He wanted to make Jimmy Savile the godfather of the second child, Harry.
Oh my God!
And Diana just was going around the palace saying, "Can somebody convince him to change his mind because it's not good for publicity to have Jimmy Savile."
So she had a mind for media and how to
oh yeah, she was really she was a victim of her own thing because at some point she started playing with. Using her position, she had a special relationship with the media. She was just so loved by people, but she played a little bit too much. And then
maybe she didn't understand the stakes.
No,
as people who aren't in, they aren't born into the snake pit, murder it. Yeah. See, that's the thing is these people kill, they murder. They're murderers, and if they figure out a way that they can murder, if you're in their way or you're threatening their power, they will murder you. They will kill you. They are a mafia. They are a mob. They are murderous.
Yeah.
Murder. Like, get that through your head, Diana. Oh, wait. She's 6 feet underground. What do you know? I guess she didn't understand her enemy.
She didn't have a choice.
That's a cardinal sin, is underestimating your enemy. With the amount of power that Diana had, she could have easily insulated herself and became more dangerous than her enemies. But the thing is the problem with being innocent and good-hearted is evil's just going to, it's going to reach in and pull your brain out without even, it's like, oh, you're a good person? Here we go. Yeah. This will be fun. You're a plaything for an art. What's it's a...
Well, what was not expected was the public reaction when she died. Because there were so many, in front of the palace, they had like a mountain of flowers for her, which the Queen didn't like much. And they didn't have, obviously, a state funeral, but it became like a state. She stole the show.
Yeah.
And
Where's the justice?
Betty was very
Is
happy.
that story? I don't buy it.
No, maybe she's still alive. Who knows? Good for her if she's got out like that.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I didn't even think of that.
I don't know.
I just think she was murdered in cold. Obviously murdered
Yeah.
in cold blood.
But what I
She was
found,
demining, like spending a lot of
Yeah.
money, taking, doing very good things.
Yeah, I mean, she was the first one during the AIDS pandemic.
Well, the mining campaigns
took-
is what really
Oh yeah,
getting rid of
Yeah.
mines out of old
Yeah.
war zones. It's like kids,
Yeah.
from a war 35 years ago, some kid's just tilling his yard and blows his arm off.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah, that's
and so
horrible.
she was making really, really good progress in
yeah.
in
But also, she was the first one to hug someone who was suffering from AIDS, and that made a big. It was a big national drama. Oh, she's like.
Yeah, the AIDS thing. The AIDS thing, I
She's
think,
really
is another
exposed it.
psyop.
Yeah.
I don't buy AIDS. I don't
That's
think
why it was so
AIDS is
big.
what it is.
Yeah. That's why she did that. She was kissing someone with AIDS and hugging,
Right.
and she became famous for that. That was the first thing that brought
Like,
her
what,
to.
what was that one's so confusing? I don't even know what the agenda is there. It's like, let's just see if we can confuse people.
Yeah.
If that was their goal, they succeeded.
Yeah.
I definitely know what they're saying about it is not true. You can become immune to AIDS.
Yeah.
The newer strains of AIDS are asymptomatic. Go figure. You know where AIDS comes from, or it's postulated that it comes from chimps, simian immunodeficiency virus, or yeah. But the thing is I say it's like, here's the annoying thing. It
don't
says
even make it.
immunodeficiency virus. It doesn't affect their immune systems.
Right.
Chimps are asymptomatic. They just carry it and it doesn't do anything.
What does asymptomatic mean?
Means
It's
no
all of a sudden
symptoms.
is some. Yeah, no, it's a rhetorical question.
Right.
It's something that came out like recently, like
Well, I've
3 or
been
4
using-
years
I've-
ago.
I've
You know,
used that word for
asymptomatic.
years.
If you don't have symptoms, you don't have anything.
Right.
I mean, I've been practicing Buddhism for 21 years, and I studied a lot about.
Have you ever had a cold sore?
Not very often.
So once ever in your life?
Yeah.
Then you are asymptomatic carrier of human papillomavirus. It never goes away.
Are you a doctor? We have everything.
I'm also.
We have everything. But a very interesting look on illness and unwellness from the Buddhist side.
Sorry, it's
It's,
not HPV. It's
It's
herpes zoster. I
It's
think.
interesting that people exactly herpes.
was
You're
wrong.
born with herpes.
Yes, it's
because
it's a form of
something
herpes
that you
virus.
get when you're born.
You can be.
And
get it
that's
when you're
another
born, yeah.
thing. When you're born on a cesarean, it's a bad thing because when you're born in the normal way, you go through you're just getting all your mother's bacteria and
Yes.
so you're actually strengthening your immune system.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there's also hormonal
know-
cascade
Yeah.
that occurs in the mother. And I got in a lot of shit when I was in college for bringing this up. And I just learned it because I was reading papers. I was in early human childhood psychology
Right.
courses, and I was doing the undergrad for it.
Right.
So I was, but I found some statistics about neglectful mothers and
Yeah.
the correlation of cesarean births and neglectful mothers.
Yeah.
And so I brought this up in class, as I found it rather interesting because it's fashionable to get cesareans in Canada, and they especially push for it,
Yeah.
which is,
It's a trauma.
interesting. Well, there's definitely some kind of
Trauma-inducing.
demonic force after kids in Canada.
Yeah.
Canada is a slave colony of slaves. They don't know they're slaves. They're all slaves. You live in Canada, you're a slave. Period. End of discussion. You are a slave. You're not allowed to speak your mind. You're not allowed to conduct business with the government involved with it. You're not allowed to buy and sell property to your own family members or even give property to your own family members. You're a slave, okay? And the government uses you as an experimental subject. And I'm not talking about the recent COVID stuff. I'm talking, this goes back all the way to the inception of Canada itself. It isn't a place. It's a place for elites to experiment. They experiment with society structures. They experiment with religions. They experiment with education systems. The CIA experimented with mind control and MK Ultra. That was born out of McGill University in Quebec. It wasn't a United States thing. It was a joint venture of intelligence communities, and the damage that McGill University has done to the world it's frightening. It's truly frightening when you start realizing what Canada is and where it came from and its origins and the war and it's a disgusting. I mean, it's beautiful. Nature's beautiful, but it is one of the worst countries. They totally stabbed the indigenous in the backs. The indigenous and Canadians were like, well, the indigenous and the British, because there was no such thing as Canada until like 20 seconds ago. It was just made up.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's England. Canada is a offshoot of, and it's not even England. It's like a retarded little brother offshoot of the empire. Anyways.
But it's not just Canada that is going through that. Like, look at places like Africa as well. But just when it gets to you, just remember, everything is fiction. This is as we were saying earlier, this is the ultimate fiction. You know, this reality is just fiction. We create everything. And I imagine, you know, God is consciousness, God is law, and there was once a golden age. And I really believe that, as you can see in nature, everything goes in cycles. So there's a cycles, and at the moment we are in this cycle, part of the cycle called Kali Yoga, or Kali Yoga.
Kali Yuga.
Kali Yuga. And and it's interesting because you start from the golden age, because you're a consciousness and you're bored in your perfection, so you want to have some drama. So you incarnate. But in the golden age, you're so much closer to God, but you are physical, and your body is much lighter. It's still material, but it's much lighter. And then you go through like the silver age and then the bronze,
yes.
You know, and you get further and further away from that connection to God, and you get more and more corrupted, and the ego gets more and more reinforced. And at the moment, we're going to like the plastic age.
Plastic age.
It's like it's a kind of reset, and it is a reset, but it's a continuous cycle. So now there are people that are closer to the connection of consciousness and with God, to help the rest of the population to start learning to live again closer to God. And this is just the beginning. And it happens when the end is near, because the end is a rebirth. And a lot of people talk about the New World Order. And actually, the New World Order it's been appropriated as a term because I'm not very much of an expert, but I do like this kind of subject. When you change timeline, because there is no past, present, or future, and sometimes even, you know, if you think about it, even past lives are not past lives; they're just timelines of when you. And
you are from Italy.
It's not, it's not rocket science. It's just like it's a very simple thing, and in times of chaos like now, the more chaotic, it's the same thing as when you're having a breakdown is also a breakthrough.
Right. Because
the more chaotic you are, the more chaos you're in, the more easy it is to jump from one timeline to another, because everything is more loose. And when you jump into another timeline, there is a new world order. There is a new world order in your mind. You're basically, you're embodying what you want to become.
And I mean, that goes back to what I was saying. The more time I spend outside of Canada, the more I realized that I was, in fact, institutionalized.
Yeah. That's why traveling is important.
It's so insidious.
Yeah.
Because you don't even realize that you're a prisoner.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these confinements are actually inside of your mind.
Yeah.
So, I would say something to one of my friends here, like, oh, I need to, accomplish something or do this. And they're like, why? And I'm like, that's nuts. And I was like, oh. There's like something to do with protocol or government shit. And they're like, you don't really need to do that if you don't want to. I'm like, well, won't you get like fines or cops show up? And they're like, no. Like the government is just not involved the way they are in other places in the world. And that could change. I hope it doesn't. But I mean, you can't do anything in Canada. You can't build a deck. You can't,
in Europe,
you can't
as
alter
well.
your own house.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that a lot
Same
of
in
places,
Italy.
heritage properties and that. And I somewhat agree with that for the really, really old antique houses to keep them, especially the ones made of stone. They're beautiful and that.
Yeah.
And so, all right, with heritage properties, I see the point. But
important.
and in Canada, it gets worse. So we have like little old ladies who manage to save up $20,000 to upgrade their house and put a new deck or a porch. I want a new porch, and it's not even that much. It could be like $8,000, or $5,000 for a new porch, just a concrete new steps, because they wear out. A porch built in the 70s is going to crumble eventually, so they want to redo it. So a little old lady, and this is a true story, little old lady goes to get her porch made for, I don't know, a few $1,000s. So the demo team comes in and goes ting, 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 and start demoing it. And then apparently they found an arrowhead or a tooth, or it was some archaeological, I think it was a tooth. It was bad. They found, so immediately our government trying to pretend like they care about indigenous. They don't care about indigenous. They don't care about anyone. They want to make money off your organs when you're dead, okay? So stop thinking the government cares about you. They don't, especially if you're in Canada, they don't. They want you dead. They want to sell your organs to China.
Don't donate your organs.
Don't donate your organs. They'll kill you faster. In
fact, exactly.
They'll figure out, that's a fact.
And the DNA.
Anyways,
forget about your DNA.
They send in the indigenous people that are like, oh, this is a burial ground and blah, blah, blah. And then they send in the archaeology team. And I know this because I used to work on one of those teams. I was an archaeological field technician.
Wow, cool.
So it's all scam. It's all big racket. So the homeowner, the little old lady's forced to pay a team of archaeologists that are $90 an hour per person. About a team of 5, 6 of them will go out there and kick rocks around and play in dirt and pretend to work for a week. I used to do that job. I used to pretend to work and do that job. So don't tell me that you actually do science. You don't. It doesn't matter. It's all money grab and you're involved in a criminal scam, in my opinion. Anyways, so the archaeology team starts digging and then it's like they find more. They find more stuff, right? And okay, the archaeological field technicians make $15 to $20 an hour. If they're good at negotiating, they make up to $30. But most of them make jack shit. And they're all university grads.
Yeah,
they're all losers with like $400 million of debt. And then they get these jobs that are paid like minimum wage. It's hilarious. I don't feel sorry for any of them. Most of them are losers. A lot of them are really great people. A lot of them are very smart, and they use this job to springboard into other things. Mm-hmm. And I really respect those people. And I respect the archaeological field technicians that actually care about the science. Yeah. It is very interesting. But when you're talking about showing up at a little old lady's house and then giving her a bill for $50,000 because of a racket between the indigenous guys, they stand there for $100 an hour pretending to care. Everyone's there pretending to care, absolutely massacring the bank account of this little old lady. Just want to make her build a new purse or porch, rather. A new porch for an old lady. That's it. Yeah. And it turns into this big multi-level scam. And who's the person that's hurt at the end of the day? Little old lady. The little old lady on a fixed income. This is a fact. This actually happened. I'll pull it up because it's one of the, egregious happenings in Canada that no one just cares. No one cares except the family. That little old lady has a son and a daughter, and they got some opinions about this, and their opinions are pretty close to how I feel about it because it's not fair. Yeah. It's not.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not.
I mean, you dig down far enough, you'll find bones.
Everywhere you dig.
Anywhere in the world. You don't own somewhere because someone died there 1,000 years ago. It doesn't matter.
Or 2,000.
Yeah. And again, and then you have this like like, oh, the indigenous in Canada, they're like so angelic and perfect, and the British came in and just destroyed and genocide. It's like wrong.
But I think they're just
wrong. It's all wrong. It's all lies.
I think that
the
they're
indigenous were just like people everywhere else. There are good ones and there are bad ones. There was tribes that lived on genociding other tribes. They didn't farm. They didn't hunt. What they did was they would engage in genocide. And there was enough people that back then that you had, and this was the Apaches, by the way. They weren't in Canada, but I think there was some like that in Canada. But the Apaches were a predator tribe. Right. They existed and subsisted off predatory murder and behavior. Mm-hmm. These are not angels. These are not people living in harmony with Earth. It's all bullshit.
But who is free of sin? You know, it's all karma. It's all karma.
I would agree with that.
And it's the same thing, like earlier we were talking about, you know, viruses and things like that, and, you know, immune system. I've read a lot, I've studied a lot of Buddhism, and there's a lot of scriptures that talk about what kind of like supports the terrain theory, that in Buddhism, the Buddhist view is that when you're out of alignment, you are more open to disease.
Oh, absolutely.
That's all it is.
I think there's a lot to. I don't fall in the category of this or that. I think they both make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There's enough hard science that like viruses do in fact exist and float around in the air. The thing that annoys me about it is like how many of them are
they
there?
cleanse you usually.
Yes. And what is their purpose?
In Latin, there's also this thing that my grandmother used to say. You know, mind. What is it? Healthy mind, healthy body.
Yes.
So the body that is healthy has a healthy mind. And but I have a positive story about archaeology. Because in the south of Italy is full of Roman and Greek history.
I love archaeology. You know, I wanted to be an archaeologist at one point in my life. I don't like denigrating that profession as an exploratory and scientific pursuit. I see there's massive value there.
And that's why I've got a
beautiful
beautiful story
in Canada, and I will call them criminal cartels, which are the indigenous Indians or whatever the hell they go by now, and these archaeological companies just like, all right, okay, a casino or a housing development with millions of dollars. Even that, it's still a money grab. It's still just a big scam.
Yeah. You get occasionally the independent archaeologists, like this guy that I met in the south of Italy, the southeast. He's like the local archaeologist, and he's trying to raise money and awareness, and he's making films to make. And then one day he saw there was a building that they did an excavation because they wanted to do an underground car park for that building. And they found the foundation of a Greek house. so he managed to get the money.
Civilization.
Yeah. So
I think that's.
He managed to get the money, and instead of building the thing, the underground car park, he put like a thick glass as a sort of floor.
So you could see. Yeah.
And then
really cool.
Yeah.
Really neat.
So but he really worked hard to get the money, to get it recognized, to stop the work, you know, because it's a mafia.
You know, situationally, those laws exist for purposes. The problem is they're being used for other things.
Yeah.
And it's.
And we need to wake up about that. We need to just stop going to school.
Like, what is the answer, though? It's like more regulation. It's the last thing we need. What we need is for people to stop being despicable garbage humans.
You can't control others. You can only control yourself.
Well, you can control others with a stick big enough.
You're still limited.
We're still monkeys.
There is a difference between force
and power. That annoys people when I say that.
Force and power. Power is more powerful than force. You are much more influencing when you're actually control yourself. clean yourself, clean your own vibration, and then you can control your environment from the field. You don't need to do other people, because otherwise you just cannot change other people. You're just fighting a lost cause.
Well, like, what would possess these agencies to try and get money out of a little old lady like that? That just doesn't make sense on any level to me.
Well, I could answer with another question that is probably controversial on camera. So what would possess people doing something much worse to much younger people?
Yeah.
You know, it's a sick society. The system is sick. So when you're healthy, you're the enemy.
Is supposed to prevent these things.
But this, we're in the Kali Yuga. We're Kali Yuga,
right?
Yeah.
They talk about that a lot in the. I'm not a conspiracy theorist so much.
It's not a conspiracy.
I want to know the truth. I want to know as much as possibly can, so I can think correctly and make decisions in my own life that make sense. And how you do that, in my opinion, is by good reconnaissance, good intelligence.
Yeah, but you're living in a time where everything is upside down because we've reached the end of this cycle. So
it is weird,
we're stretched so far away from the consciousness of God and the law. We're so disconnected with life that everything is upside down. So it's the final, kicking and screaming of the ego, because it can't. It's like when you're starting with some drugs, you're having a great time, and then you become independent. And in the end, you're becoming a zombie. That's what society is like now. We're going through the distraction. So everything that it's promoted that is just, it's the opposite of what's just.
It's almost, and I'm like, I'm not like the fantastical type that thinks there's spirits everywhere and
but
there are, sure, but I have noticed a lot of almost biblical kind of situations going on, referring to the depth of depravity and evil that we're now seeing attempt to be acceptable by society. Like, anyone is going to be like, yeah, cool, let's sexually exploit children. Like, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with my daughter twerking, 6 years old. I don't
People
know.
cannot
I just
face
throw my
it.
hands up, and it's like, how is this even allowed to get off the ground at all?
It's always been like that, throughout history.
Well, there's sick
if
people.
you look, so going back to the borders,
not that many. They're always in a minority, massive minority. Like, yeah, there's a weirdo here and there, and
but the point is that it's in.
But like, it's on TV now.
It's the virus that it's in our society, So we are the host.
Well, they were really pushing this. I mean, I grew up, I guess you could say, fairly liberal. I don't feel the need to religiously proselytize or tell people what they can and can't do or who they can and can't love. And I don't believe regulating. I don't believe in regulating drugs at all. I think there should be perhaps regulation in poison.
I think we need to inner regulate.
So if something's poisonous, I think that should be regulated. If something has the capability of killing you or a child, I think there should be some simple rules that are based in common sense.
The rule is there's no rule. We've gone so far from what is just that now you need to.
Let me finish though. As an adult, I am feeling that the only way that we're going to have any sort of future that resembles anything like the prosperity of the 80s or the 90s, you could say, is by like 80% of the population going full-on conservative Bible thumper. No. Because the ability for the average person to have a framework of morality doesn't seem to exist. Maybe prove me wrong, and hopefully maybe you can convert me, but I don't have faith in humanity to be atheist. I don't think they can do it. They're too dumb. The average intelligence and the average person is too stupid to make decisions that are good for themselves, decisions for their families, and decisions for their children without a strong religious influence. I don't think it's possible. I think there's outliers that can do it. I think there's very intelligent people out there, but they simply are not. There's not enough of them, and most people are just too dumb. And being a Canadian, I had that demonstrated right in front of my face. So I don't need to say like, well, what if something happened, and everyone had to decide whether they're going to go this way or that. Well, it did happen, and I saw it. Most people, especially Canadians, are stupid and incompetent and ignorant and cannot function as human beings. They can't raise their own children without turning them into, or convincing, like, the sick shit that's being allowed and encouraged in terms of, like, let's let our 7-year-old son cut his penis off or take drugs that make him essentially disable him the rest of his life. Like, this stuff is just so ridiculous that it's like, and then the COVID stuff. It's like, I don't have faith in humanity anymore. I think we need to go full conservative, full Bible. You're required to go to church every Sunday, whether you believe in it or not.
Church is corrupted. Being religious is not the same as being in communion with your consciousness, your divine consciousness and God. So that's the problem.
What do you mean?
Everything
the
has been
church? I think good old Christian church that my grandfather and grandma went to. My mom, she was like,
I don't like the Bible because it's really, it goes against women, and
and it's like, well, look at what your life turned out. Look at what happened as soon as you turned your back on that. You thought you had all the answers. You have more answers than what, 5,000 years of society working its way towards some semblance of having, no slavery, and pain is minimalized, and families can grow, and people can be free, and they're not killing each other over territory, and they're not killing each other because my neighbor has a cuter wife than me. The darkness of female nature is something that we've ignored. Okay, women are exceptionally dangerous.
Everybody is exceptionally dangerous when they're not aligned. Don't forget that where there is shade, there's light. The brighter the light, the stronger the shade. And in Buddhism, Buddhism says that there are the 3 major poisons in human beings: corruption, anger, greed, which is corruption, and foolishness. So the system, the corruption
well, I think there's
of
more
the
than
ego,
that.
the ego mind. Well, that's the basic
There's
3.
7 sins, right?
Yeah, but the basic 3 poisons that give life to everything else, it's anger, greed, and stupidity, foolishness. And religions, all the religions have been hijacked. They've been politicized. So you being religious doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
You have to be.
You're not wrong. But I think going to the Bible and living with the dog. And I don't do it. I'm not religious, but I have a way above average.
There are so
many.
There's so many editions. There's so many translation. You couldn't believe the amount of manipulation you can do through translations. And, there've been translators who lost their lives for translating the Bible in the right thing, in the right way.
I'm not saying it's a perfect system, but no system versus an imperfect
God's system is the only one. If you think about, I've been practicing Buddhism, but I think, figures like Jesus Christ, who I've seen that he was actually a Buddhist.
Yes.
During the time of his life, he was a Buddhist, and some of the
He went to India, did he not?
Some of the parables that he was expounding come from the Lotus Sutra, which is the school of Buddhism that I practice, and it's not mainstream. And if you put yourself, whether it's a fiction or not, look at the narrative of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was just showing us, I'm human, but I'm an expression of the divine. And it was just showing how we can operate and how to access our own power.
Mm-hmm.
So follow the narrative of Jesus Christ. If you put yourself in in his shoes, you know, and you're looking at all the injustices that go around the world, how can you embrace it? You need a really strong nervous system to embrace all the darkness that there is in the world. And people say, oh, if God was so compassionate and really loving, why would he allow all this? He allows all this because we have free will. We have squandered our free will through anger, greed, and stupidity. And the ego, we succumb to the ego. So if you look at the culture everywhere, Western and Eastern, unless you are a minority, the culture is very materialistic. So even if you look at philosophy is everything is intellectual. We have, we need the physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. The spiritual side
The average
has
person
been
doesn't.
killed
I'm with
completely.
you. I'm with you
So
on
this is what we need to
Absolutely.
rebirth.
I totally agree with you. My issue and my point is what I'm saying is the average person just doesn't care. So you have to force it on them.
I think the average person
And
is
we're seeing the results
so
of people being allowed to just
brainwashed. You
Well,
know.
that's what I mean. It's like if there's nothing there, it's open for something else to go in there, and that something else
But it's okay.
is not.
It's okay if you realize that you are.
Well, the LGBTQ
an
thing
expression-
is not okay, and that
No,
is
it's
a
not
new
okay.
religion.
Everything
it's
is not
invented
okay.
by It's a Marxist thing.
I know. Even feminism was kind of
Yes,
used in
it's
a negative thing.
deranged
Although there are,
child of Marxism. Yes, and
Although
it's designed
there
to
are-
destroy families,
yeah,
and it's very effective at that. I am a victim of feminism.
yeah.
I'm a victim.
But there is
And
a right.
It's taken a lot
There
of
is a natural
strength to even
right,
admit that.
balanced way of feminism because we
No, there's
both
not.
have.
I disagree.
I don't like isms anyway,
I don't either. I
but
especially dislike feminism. I think it's a virus of the destruction
Yeah.
that feminism has caused humanity in the past 50 years.
people have been
is
manipulated.
worse than the Second World War.
because when
It's
you
worse than
are,
Hitler.
especially in a country like Italy, if you're a woman,
You know who the victims
you
are?
are nothing.
Who are the victims of feminism?
Everybody is a victim, both men and women and
children.
children. Everyone.
Children are hurt.
Yeah,
Are
but at the
the
same time,
most.
if you think about being a woman at the time when feminism was especially it came about really after the Second World War, when women.
Follow the
well,
money.
actually, the
Follow the
First
money.
World War, First World War, when all the men went to the front, and the women were running everything.
I'm probably going to get in trouble for this.
The
but
women
this is the
when
thing.
running-
This show, I like to tell the truth.
So do I.
I'm not going to fluff up and
No,
pretend.
but I don't disagree with you. But I'm
Yeah.
saying that just like LGBTQ, XYZ, the people themselves, actually the most balanced, they actually feel that they're being weaponized. And the same thing is with
Yes.
feminism, because it was weaponized. But if you were a woman, like in the First World War, women and children were called to grow food in the farms because all the men, especially in England, all the men went to the front. And actually, I lived in the last 10 years in Britain. I lived in the southwest, Devon, where I discovered that they were the most rebellious, and so the men actually fought because a lot of people went as a volunteer in the First World War. And the only one who didn't go were the men from Devon. And then eventually at some point it was a conscription, so they had to go. In the last year they had to go. And the massacre, the amount of people that were killed there for nothing. And there was the home front, and there was loads of stories about the home front. And the farms were basically manned by women. And they were looking for 12-year-old boys who would work in the farms. They were paid more than a woman. So there was one particular woman who had connections, and she was a wealthy woman. She managed to manage and run a farm, and she made sure that there were all women, it was like a rebellious thing to do. All women were running, and everybody was laughing at them. They were called witches. The whole first year of the Second World War in England, they were being laughed at. They became the number one farm who was producing all the food that was sent to the front, to the soldiers.
I find that hard to believe.
And but yeah, that's what. Okay, you're trying to wind me up.
No.
But,
I know what you're saying is
stuff,
facts, but I find that hard. That's hard to believe.
But it was true because there were a lot of letters. I mean, I was singing in a choir.
A hell of a group of women. And
a lot of women.
Uncommonly.
Well, they were really tough. Yeah, and by the end of the year,
I don't see women cooperating very often.
Well, during the war, it was it was a massive shock. The First World War. I mean, it's commemorated.
Like, why would everyone laugh at them?
In Europe, because they were women. Children, boys of 12-year-old boys were paid more to work in a farm than women weren't paid.
12-year-old boys are stronger and faster.
Well, stronger and faster, but they don't have the maturity of an adult and a woman. A woman running a house, running a place of, like, a farm, it's a woman's thing. And so by the first year, they stopped laughing at them. They stopped laughing at them. But because of that, women at the end of the war, women couldn't just go back home and being, patriarchally, bossed around. That's how, women's consciousness came about, that they wanted to be independent. I've actually met women who were soldiers in the Second World War. And there was this lady on a Zimmer frame. I was doing a workshop for the over 50s. That was about 10 years ago. And I was talking about storytelling and how object as well tells stories. And I had a gramophone at the time, and I brought it in. And as soon as they saw the gramophone, there was this lady on a Zimmer frame, Mary. There were two Marys. One was grumpy, the Zimmer frame lady, who was always like sick. And the other one, is the same age, was the opposite. And turned out that they were talking about the Second World War, and said, we were working, we were like cooking for the soldiers, and because by then the war was in the city, it was hitting the private citizens. And the other woman goes, I worked in the Second World War as well. So really, what did you do? I was a sniper.
As a Russian girl.
And she goes, really, how many did you shoot? She was basically shooting at Germans' airplanes. And you think like this 90-year-old lady,
Well,
if you only knew the stories.
It doesn't matter what's in your pants to pull a trigger.
Exactly. So the wars gave women a different insight to what it's like to be independent.
So the insight that they gained to be independent, which is good, because I don't believe in subjugation.
Yeah, because patriarchy was the same kind of psyop as well, before feminism.
No. You have... So patriarchy is something that goes back tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 years. And the reasons for that, the reasons why that is not fully understood. All right?
Money.
Well, no, it's there's reasons that are not fully understood, and they have to do with child rearing. I only understand it because I went through it in the worst way possible. But there is. See, the thing with men is we don't communicate. We don't explain things, and we don't talk very often, and we don't communicate emotions.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to listen to men say all that shit. However, we have a...
it's been beaten into you.
No, it hasn't been beaten into us. Wrong.
No?
So the thing is like, women are so hard to understand. It's like, no. Men are hard to understand. Men understand each other. And we have ways of communicating with each other that are body language, respect.
Yeah.
Respect is you want to see it stripped down, go to a jail. Go to a jail and see how the men interact with each other. That's stripped down. That's the facades of the layers of good behaving society taken away, and you can see how men interact with each other in the pure form. And It's based on respect. And respect is
Yeah.
intangible and is not something that is you can communicate, because what you think respect is might be something different than what I think it is, and especially the fact that you're a woman. I would argue that you don't understand respect in the way that it relates to a man at all. Zero. There's zero understanding or respect from females to what respect is to men and what it means between men and how men express or don't express it between each other.
Tell us. Tell us.
It's hard to
Even in-
verbalize.
even
it's hard
in
to verbalize,
pictures.
but it's
Tell
like
us in
jokes.
pictures.
It's like so
Tell us.
we
in
spar with each
archetypes.
other all the time. We're always
Yeah,
sparring.
yeah.
Right? And I
True.
mean, you notice that.
Oh, the British is,
ball busting is a very famous way of doing it.
Did you have a game called Lemon Face at school?
No.
The British boys have. Lemon Face is like.
So, okay, what is the difference? What is the difference between, absolute master of business, a head of their society, a pillar of the community, ultra hardworking, respectful, gives back, and a murderous criminal in jail? What's the difference? Most of the time. It's a relationship with the mother.
Oh yeah, everything's about the mother.
It's a relationship with the mother.
Before you go out with someone, make sure that you know what his relationship with his mother is like and was like.
Very good. It's
Yeah.
and it's not like if you talk a lot or you're close. It's not that. It's not that. What it is, and I mean, this may again. I'm an anthropological type of guy. I like to look at the evolution. I like to look at the logical progression of natural selection in a natural environment that shapes a species over the course of millions of years.
Can I call you Anthropol?
Sure.
Anthropol.
You can call me that. Okay. So we're a great ape. You want to debate?
I don't even think we're apes.
Okay. Well,
We
we're
don't
apes.
come from apes.
We're apes. We share 99.998%
Nah.
of our genetic code. We're apes.
That's one
we're
narrative.
apes. We're apes. We're apes. We're not superior. In fact, chimps
We're unique.
are more evolved than we are. If you look at it in terms of the longevity of a species, if you look at it in terms of the robustness of the immune system, for instance, chimps are 2 million years ahead of us. We can't keep up to them in every single way other than our ability to flap our lips and make little machines. They're superior.
Look at cats. They're even more than the monkeys.
Chimps are superior to
Chimps.
us in every single way other than our mind and our linguistic
Can you
skills.
kill that mosquito
Yes.
while you're at it?
Okay, so what I'm getting at
Yeah.
is orangutans. Now, orangutans are strange in the ape world because they live their entire lives alone,
Yeah.
right?
Thinkers.
They live alone. Now, okay, so orangutans spend, in most orangutans, there are little small pockets of social orangutans, but
Yeah.
we're not talking about them. We're talking about the main ones. They spend their whole lives alone, except for very brief periods where they meet up. And I think the females might stick together, but the males spend their whole lives alone.
Of course.
Now,
a lot of
what do you
males.
think an orangutan's relationship is like with an orangutan mother?
Well, very sexual. Because I know, like, certain animals, like elephants and whales, they kind of get
In terms
together
of-
during the mating times.
Yeah,
and most
yeah.
of the time, they're not. They live on their own.
It's not. It's
It's
this
the women
this is
that
a light
build the
bulb. This is a light
community.
bulb for me because it's not. I don't expect you to get at what I'm getting at because it surprised me and it doesn't seem logical. So the ape that spends, okay, so you have chimps. They live in a big group. They're always social. How long does the baby stay clinging to the mother in that where they start the span of time between newborn and then
Yeah,
a
they've got
toddler
a
that
rite of
starts-
passage when they are kind of getting into adulthood and they
Right. So chimps are more
challenge
like us.
the male,
They're-
the dominant male.
Well, that's
They
no.
challenge it.
That's when they're adults. I'm talking about like
Oh,
the
okay.
distance between or the closeness of a chimp mother and a baby chimp, or human mother and a baby human, because we're almost the exact same in all ways. The amount of time that they spend very close, like inseparable, right? The inseparable phase when they're like very new baby.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so we have humans, very social. Chimps, very social. Orangutans, not social. But they seem to survive that way. They're fine with being solitary. So, okay, so what is the span of time?
Don't know.
That you have the baby clingy period.
For the orangutan.
Do you think it's longer for the social animal or longer for the solo animal?
It's probably longer for the solo animal.
You're actually right.
Yeah.
You're correct, and it's much longer.
Because you have a good attachment, therefore you don't need to connect with other people a lot.
Exactly.
But most humans don't have a clean attachment style.
Well, I noticed the relationships. So my mother, she might watch this. She was brainwashed by feminism in the 70s. Very, in the worst ways. And didn't really understand that maybe adding these things were taking away other things. Okay? And those things, she wouldn't be able to understand them because she's not a man. And she isn't family with a lot of it's your partner. You're not family with that side, but your children are. And that's something that feminism doesn't really, understand, right? Is that, and we need our gangs. Like most gangs of men, like men are happy when they're with their friends, they're on their soccer team. Like when are they the happiest? Yeah. You can't get them out of the damn bars, at least when they're playing sports together.
Well, the same women as well. Yeah. They're social animals.
So the bond, okay, and this is something I noticed with Italian families in particular, because I was a soccer player growing up.
Mexican,
I was a soccer player growing up.
All right.
As the mothers...
Football, you mean? The proper football.
Football, correct.
It's football.
Football.
The rest of it is American football.
That's right. I noticed the Italian mothers were like the ultimate cheerleaders. Like their sons were like their little kings. They could do no wrong. And they were always there, like, encouraging them. And, the guys would be like, oh, yeah, mom, whatever. And they pass it off or something. But I didn't have that. And I noticed that I had to really do a lot of work to gain where these guys were. A lot of them weren't that special. They weren't the greatest players. They weren't the smartest. They weren't that charismatic. But they were fucking confident.
Okay. Stop right there.
Confidence.
Because I grew up in Italy. And
cocky.
If you're saying to me that it's like that, but it's not healthy because...
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying I'm
should have,
observing.
let me say this, that they don't reserve the same kind of support and emotional support to the daughters. And because of that,
I'm not talking
they
about
put the boys, and that's, I've always said, the problems with the Italian man is the mothers. They put the boys on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And they put the girls like servants because they're projecting on them.
Perfect.
Because
that's the recipe for a strong and robust society.
That's rubbish because you're actually suffering.
Well, prove it wrong.
You're a second-class citizen.
We're in the age of feminism right now. How's society going? We got kids cutting their dicks off.
I grew up in a place
where...
where...
that in the 60s, 50s, 40s? No.
Well, you never know. Things happen in the same
freaks,
way.
But like, it's not
what I'm saying is that this is like supporting the boys at the expense of the girls, right? I was a second-class citizen in everything, and the parents and grandparents. And in terms of like... especially money and financially. You can study as much as you want, but you don't need to work. And you actually get less money. You're learning to say, I'm worth less because I'm a girl.
Yeah.
And if you stand up, you just get ostracized. And that's why a lot of women have a bad relationship with money.
Sure.
And in the end, nowadays we live in like the singlehood. Well, in Italy, there's not a lot of that. There's still the family behind, and if you have
because it's a patriarchal culture, which works.
No, it doesn't.
And it has
it
worked.
It doesn't work. It works from the distance, but the reason why I left Italy was because it doesn't work. Unless you have a functioning family, you are...
Well, it is really dependent on the quality of the character of the
very
people
outside.
involved.
No, it's...
I don't, and again, I don't,
yeah.
see, that's
You're
brings
putting
us
the
back-
boys on a pedestal. No wonder. When you're put, if you look at people
Well,
from
they're in
higher
the ground
classes...
right now. Never
if
mind
you,
a pedestal.
if you look at the
boys
any,
are
in
be-
any
the boys aren't allowed
culture...
to be boys.
The
you know, you're not,
but
you
the
know what's
women-
going on out there.
Where?
You know what's going, like...
Yeah, I know.
What I went through was
know.
nothing compared to what the
I know.
the little boys are
I know,
going through now.
especially
You're
now
not
where
allowed
they're
to be a
going
boy.
like they don't have a proper family. A lot of them is one single mother family, so they don't have
which
a
leads to
father's-
criminality,
Exactly, they don't
overwhelming
have a
criminality.
but even women
Statistics prove
don't
that.
have that. So what I'm saying is that it's favoritism at the expense of the other, and it's still imbalance because there's a hell of a lot of injustices within the family, you know.
Yeah,
And
you know,
people
they say
don't know. If you
it's-
don't have a functioning family, you're nothing. It's trauma, one trauma after another,
yeah, I
perpetuating
mean-
from one generation to another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot
So-
of gray area, and I think we're actually a lot closer than we are further away, because I agree with you in that it's wrong to put one on a pedestal and then take away from the other. Like, that's not right.
Because it's abuse as well.
Yeah.
Even the child is put on a pedestal is being abused, because I've seen it with my own eyes. The boys in the family, some of them, well, most of them, that had that preference, you know, being grown up, that like nothing, no matter what they did, it could never go wrong. They didn't become well-functioning adults. They're just like petulant boys because they got it all. And
Too much
then
mom.
all these moms and grandmothers who now don't exist anymore,
Yeah.
you know, they are alone. They cannot relate. They cannot, you
Well,
know,
we're
they're becoming like, they have a problems of narcissism.
Right.
Big problem.
Yeah.
They're misogynist, they are violent, manipulative, and they just think they're the top, you know. They're the top and they're not. And when problems, you know, hit the fan,
You're absolutely
the
right.
girls actually keep it all
You're
together.
absolutely right. But let's
My
pull
grandmother
back.
was the boss of the family.
Sure. Let's pull back for a second. Oh, got a mosquito there. Pull back for a second. What if you're on the way to the top? Wouldn't it be better to feel like you are on the top?
If
that
you
in that the goal is actually attainable? And of course,
You have to clean your
not
mind
everyone's going to
first.
climb Mount Everest. Not every guy's going to make it, and there's a lot of losers out there that think they're great and they're not. And yes, absolutely. However,
he likes chewing.
what
yeah.
happens? What happens when?
She likes chewing.
What happens when you give a hardworking guy? You know, maybe there's 5 brothers. One of them. So mom loves all of them. It's okay.
It's okay?
Yeah. Mom loves all of them, right? Does the Italian mom thing, and then the guy grows up and becomes CEO, president, creates 500 jobs. And, you know how hard to do that. Hard it is to do that without
How
any
you
confidence.
do it. It's not what you do, it's how you
Without
do
any
it.
confidence, that guy doesn't exist.
Confidence
got
is
4 guys-
everything. Confidence is everything.
That's what the
And in
mom-
fact, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
there was one of my favorite authors.
I mean, this could go too far, and I think
Yeah.
you gave us plenty examples of over-mothering can have a...
but that's not a badge of honor, because everybody should be encouraged, because everything is not about competence but confidence.
Competence is everything. With
Competence,
men and respect.
you can be overcompetent and still feel like a fraud,
You know how long-
because you don't have confidence. You know what was it?
Well, I think it's
fraud.
competence, right? Which is the ability to actually do the thing that you think
Yeah,
you can do.
but competence is not enough if you're not confident.
Correct.
You don't feel
Absolutely.
competent.
Yes.
And that
Absolutely.
comes
And I
with,
think
if you
that's
look
why
at the
Italian
difference.
boys have an advantage.
Yeah, but at the
They have an
expense of the
advantage.
women. At the expense of the women. So in those days when you had a chance to actually voice your concern, of course we've been used. Women have been weaponized in the same way that trans have been weaponized, you know. And the trans themselves are the ones that coming out and say, this has all been weaponized. The only one that support the narrative now, it's the people who are not in alignment. So,
well, they're like militarized.
I respect everyone, and I have friends who are gay, trans, straight. It doesn't really matter, But
Yeah,
what I don't agree is the weaponization of what's happening now, because they're just using them as much as we've been used.
And it's not just them; it's ethnic groups too.
Yeah, it's dividing people.
Yeah,
and it's making it kind of like over the top.
That's why when you see someone like obsessing over one group and blaming them for all the problems, what you're seeing is the product of propaganda.
Yeah,
you're seeing the product of a deliberate attempt to alter the way that someone thinks, so that the real bad people, which could be part of any group. I mean, there's good and bad people in every single group, and everybody goes up and down. There's even good and bad everywhere in the world.
There are even good reptilians.
Yeah, that's right.
Everybody's evolving.
So that's something I'm wary for, and I try and find news stories for our blogs, right? So I'm always looking for real happenings from people that are actually from the country, and I'm not just looking through the lens of Washington Post or some interpretation.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it takes me to some of the darkest corners of the internet. I think of it as mining.
Right.
I'm going into a dirty, dark, terrible place to hopefully find a gem.
What are you, the canary? What was that thing? The canary theory?
But so in some of the forums that I'm in, there's some really, really dark shit. Like there's people blaming Jews, for instance, for everything wrong in the world. It's the Jews, it's the Jews. And it's like, well, if I was one of the people doing evil in the world, how convenient for it to have this group that I can just have everyone think is doing everything. Maybe I'm one of them, maybe I'm not.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? So don't fall for the propaganda. I mean, you think they all meet up and think of evil shit? It's just so ridiculous. And I'm not saying that there aren't evil Jews out there that are possibly, working to concentrate power and take over institutions. I'm not saying that's not happening, but just saying it's the Jews it's irresponsible, dangerous, and it's stupid, and it's ignorant.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
So that's, that's
the
a warning.
devil.
Or it's the women, it's feminism, and I mean, maybe I come across as being like trying to blame one singular thing. It's
blame
not.
Canada. Blame Canada.
That's right. So it's not as simple as that, and that's what I love about the truth. Is the truth. That's what I love and hate about the truth, because it's so complicated, and we can't just explain it in a fancy little.
The truth is
tie
simple.
a bow on the box, and here it is. It's not simple. Look at ethnic movement in the history of Europe. If you look at the genetic evidence, which is what I like to look at because you can't fake that, it's like this.
I don't think it's complicated. The truth is simple. It's just that life is diverse. It's so diverse that from the point of view of the ego, everything is complicated. In fact, what did they say? What's that proverb? The details in the devil. Because it is. And in Italian, we have this proverb, the devil makes the pot, but not the lid. Because everything is a loose hand. It's manipulating things. So it's not completing. So it's not that the truth is complicated. It's diverse. And that's what the evil is trying to suppress. Diversity. But you cannot do it. You can't suppress.
Well,
whatever is simple doesn't mean that it's easy. To be...
Anthropological history shows that the least diverse societies do the best. Yeah. In terms of prosperity, wealth, quality of life,
do the best
crime.
On the surface. But if you look at behind the scenes, there's a lot of sacrifice to beat that person into a square. Yeah. So that
they were
is
ultra
that is
conservative. It probably
that's why
wasn't that fun.
television is a weapon of mass destruction, because be careful of the narrative,
Right.
The true meaning of anarchy is just diversity. It's not a bunch of people who just go around destroying.
Well,
If you're really
the average person
an
has
anarchist,
no idea
you don't
how,
destroy
how
anything.
complicated an intelligent person can wage war. So, like,
You can be intelligent, but if you are dysregulated, because inside yourself you're still being run by the programs that created you, that came out of trauma as you were a kid, when you were a kid, you can be as intelligent and as knowledgeable as you like, but you you're so dysregulated that there's no wisdom.
right.
You need the wisdom.
Wisdom will allow you to suss out the subversion. For instance, you have we had a big protest, the G11 or something. It was 15 years ago or something in
Right.
Canada. A lot of world leaders there, and people were protesting for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't even know why.
Same
They
in
were.
my hometown.
But there was some of the protesters started throwing rocks at the cops, right? And then people were like, who are like the protests started realizing, like, we don't know who these guys are that are throwing rocks at the cops. And then they started noticing that these guys were wearing military boots,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
So
this is the style of subversion we're dealing with. So when you have someone in your previous example, you're saying, like, well, we're being used as weapons. Well, why don't I just send, one of my evil guys into your community, and then
why not? Let me tell you why.
that's what they're doing. And
Let me
it's-
tell you why. You're never going to change anything until you break the cycle. You break the cycle by learning the frequency of love, which is not, love, romantic, love everybody. No, love and compassion can be really hard. But the only way to stop this is by, in a way, having the attitude that the Canadians truckers had, where they were being attacked in every possible way, and they were just partying, making food for everybody, all the homeless people in the city,
my
just
online
that's how
friends
you
list
do
are
it.
Still recovering from that.
That's how you do it. It's tough, but going back to the narrative of Jesus Christ, if you put yourself in his shoes, you look at what they did to him, is showing you how to alchemize everything to have heaven on earth, because this is heaven. This is Eden, the Garden of Eden. And the humans have the capacity to alchemize pain into love. So it takes a very strong...
I like that word, alchemize.
Alchemize.
I would say
That's what
transmute, but
Same thing.
Same thing.
Alchemize, transmute it. You've got to have love. And that doesn't mean that if somebody does something wrong to you or to someone, like I have a very strong sense of justice. So if somebody is doing something wrong, even if it's not done to me, I can see it. I can't stand
I'm
it.
the
I
same
have
way.
to fight for it.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that you condone what the person, you can still not like it, the person, but what you're condoning, what you are
principle,
actually,
and that's an elevated.
yeah,
So this
what
is,
you're attacking is the behavior, not
so
the
you
person.
have that mental framework that I think is missing from too many people for
Yeah.
a science atheist style society to function.
Yeah.
It
But not
could if it was
everybody's the
people like
same.
you. If it was people like you, it would absolutely work. But unfortunately, not. There's just
But people
not
like
enough
me,
people like you.
people like me are here to teach how to do it.
Well, there's
because
there's a
everybody,
lot of work to be done.
Yeah, everybody has their own
And
pace.
that's hopeful. I
They
like
they
that.
grow at their own pace.
Yeah.
And I discovered, talking about archetypes, I discovered a new type of archetypes that are even stronger than the one I've been working with, and that's human design. It's something, I don't know if you ever come across human design as a kind of system that works out the personality. There are a number of personalities that people have, and it's calculated with your date of birth and some kind of contract that was done at the soul level 3 months before your birth. And it's based on the position of the planet. And I think, it's coherent. It's logical. it makes sense that you're under a certain energetic influence, right?
Yes.
But it's something that I've only recently discovered, thanks to our friend Carol. I discovered what my profile is, and they are very powerful, very informative archetypes. And I discovered that my archetype is called the projector. And the projector, apparently, out of all the people that been doing the test, they only are like a 20% of the population. And within the projectors, there are different types of projector. And my combination of things is only like, it's called a mental projector, which is only like 2 or 3%. And the mental projection, the story goes that on a soul level, the mental projector is a kind of new kid in town. It's been around, it's like, if you think about our incarnations being like the soul journey, and you're getting into contract, and you get, to incarnate, you decide to incarnate because you've got your mission to accomplish, your purpose. Mm-hmm. So apparently, these projectors only came on the scene like 200 or 300 years ago. They're very new, and they are new because they are the ones who are closest to consciousness and a lot less involved in the sort of three-dimensional life. So people who are under the projector archetype, they're here because they're visionary. They see the invisible. They see the future. They see in times of chaos like we're living. Yeah. They're the ones who actually they connect a lot more with people, because there are parts of your body, the meridians, and I don't even know what they're called. I call them nodes. They're similar to chakras, but they're not chakras. They have energy that is not just their own. They have this middle chakra that it's kind of blank. It's white. And what it means is that they're like amplifiers. They don't have their own energy centers, but it gets activated when they are around other people. Okay. So they're kind of vessels. Yeah. And they can see, once they connect with people, it's very important who they choose, because the environment really affects the projector. And
I want to hold your thoughts there, because we're going to need to do another show, because you're still in film school right now. We haven't even. You're 22. You're in England. That's where we.
Oh my God! Yeah. Yeah.
So
how did you know 20? It's interesting. You're just coming out with something that you didn't even notice. Oh. I have noticed. You are telepathic.
So you're in England.
I'm in England.
You're
I want to go native, so I don't speak Italian with anyone. Yeah. And then I go and get an O level in English.
Did they bust your balls a little bit when you went to? Were they like, "Oh, you want to meet the ball?" Or
God. I had to change the spelling of my name, because everybody was calling me a different name, and I don't like it. But it took me a few years, and eventually I wanted to go native, so I wanted to lose my accent, and to a certain degree I have. Yeah. And then I found a really good teacher when I went high school and I did my A-levels in English. He encouraged me and said, "You can go and study English at university." So I got accepted, and that was quite traumatic, because eventually I got what I wanted, and then I resented it because nobody knew how to deal with my essay writing. I even did a module that was about writing poetry, and I got top marks. So that's when I learned how to film editing was my favorite things, because I was living between two languages, and I was being brainwashed at the time, because I used to write a lot of poetry in Italian, and when eventually I went to university and studied English, I kind of lost it, and I felt like I was being brainwashed into, like, do this, and like as an undergraduate, you're like,
You're impressionable.
You're meant, the essays that you write, there's a protocol. You can't just think with your mind, so they didn't like my essays,
Right.
But I studied a lot. I just wanted to come out with good marks, and I did. But I learned editing was writing with images. And that's why my favorite editor is Walter Murch. He actually says it's a language. It is a language, or semiotics, So for me, I've been living my own diaspora, even though, diaspora is usually like extreme cultures like Africa or, China going west. But I was living my own diaspora because the differences are very subtle, but they're very insidious. And at the time, I used to have my boyfriend at the time, he was Scottish, Dorian, but he grew up in Africa because his parents were, his father was working as a consul. So he grew up in Africa, and he didn't have experience of Europe outside England. And when I did my dissertation, it was a video. It was about my experience living in my diaspora at college. And he came to Italy with me. He was a cameraman. And he was saying, I can't put my finger on it, but this is the first time I get on the continent. And it's like, it's not that big a difference that you get in Africa, but there are differences. And I cannot tell what the differences are, but they're very unsettling. He just couldn't work it out. They're very insidious because the differences are subtle in cultures.
Well,
so
I've done a
really
little reading
gets
about
you.
that, but I'm not educated enough to comment on it. But I've heard similar things from other people that have operated in Africa. Like they don't have the same conceptually they experience reality different.
Yeah.
And their language encompasses reality in a different way.
Yeah.
Like things like that we take as foundational, like telling lies or showing up on time or having an appointment or a promise. The concept of a promise is not, it doesn't exist in their they don't even have a word for it.
Right.
It's just like, oh, I might do it. I may show up.
Yeah.
I might.
Yeah.
It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, many. They don't even count. Counting was like a new thing.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit
10
like
or 20, past the digits of your hands and feet. There was no numbers.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
many.
the Aboriginal from Australia, they actually have a completely different language. And to say hello, they have a lot of directions, north, south, east, west, northwest, southeast. It's like, how are you? Oh, southwest. Today I'm southwest. They speak that way. And that is a completely different way of seeing life, which is lost because everything that you study, all the research is mainly done in English.
Yeah.
And that is just depleting the diversity of life and research about consciousness that researches on itself.
That is its own subject, that pristine subjects, say it again. Like untouched culture is a great place to learn from in terms of psychoanalytical stuff that I think we're referring to. It's like those are the perfect places to really fill in the gaps. The tribes people in the Amazon, the indigenous ones, there's uncontacted people in there, and like the elders that we do talk to, and they do media and stuff. Like these guys are pretty out there, and like they call us little brother, right? Like our society, they're big brother. They're the big brother. We're the little brother, and we're the ones that are fucking everything up. These guys, they like go up to the mountain. They're like, look, see how they built that city there? No water now over there. 100 years there'll be no water, and they were right. Like there was a guy who predicted rainfall in Brazil or something, and it was, or I don't remember the exact story, but it was they had a line of gold, like, and he was running the gold around to do some ceremonial thing, and then he was educating the government on why they were having droughts. And he's like, you're having droughts because the forest is a sponge of water, and basically explained some rather rudimentary geological realities. But
They
it's
didn't
just
have
lost.
Roman engineering.
It's
They
just
didn't have
lost.
Roman engineering. What happened to the Romans? They went to Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I think about the city. I've always been a city person, but the city is wrong. You know, there shouldn't even be rubbish or garbage.
Yeah.
Everything is recyclable.
Yeah.
So, but again, the way in the cities were built in the old days, and I mean, even from England, I was looking at the architecture of town centres in Italy. It's just so completely different. The way cities were built were about the people, were about the agora, which is agora, as they say in English, where it's the marketplace for people, and the city centres were built in a friendly, natural, well, maybe not natural all the time because of the Enlightenment, they were like all straight lines, you know. But the city's centres were built in a natural way. They were built with this socialization in mind. And there's a kind of beauty that I can't see outside of Europe. So there is something beautiful there from, you know, the small brother, the little brother.
The little brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, the little brothers.
Because there's so much creativity.
So you're in film school. I want to talk about your career in television, and then how you got into becoming a healer, and doing what you do, and some of the stuff that you do around here.
Yeah.
But we're out of time.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to do another show.
Yeah.
I think this is the most tangential show I've ever done, but I was like, on this one, it's like, let's just let it go.
Yeah.
You know, we'll go on these side shoots, and you know, I think it's kind of fun to just let the conversation deviate and go around. I think I started a couple points and didn't even finish them, and you know what? That's okay. That's okay. So we're gonna have Roxana back. So definitely leave comments and questions for her. I believe the subject will be the archetypes, and this is archetypes of like psychological archetypes.
Yeah, archetypes are just a way in to into your unconscious.
We're going to learn about her journeys into the specific form of Buddhism, which I'm very much looking forward to. I'm very curious. I just found out I just read the other day that Jesus was a Buddha, and you're the only person in my entire life who's mentioned that, and I read that a week ago, like in my own research. So it's interesting that you brought that up, and we'll get into that. That's going to be very interesting. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way to the end,
Hope so.
And we'll see you next time. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It's incredibly expensive to do these videos. It's very difficult, and it helps us so much if you do that one little thing. If you think you got some value out of this, or you know someone that might get some value out of it, please send it to them. And don't be shy. Leave those comments. I already said it. I'll say it again.
Yes, leave those comments.
All right.
Stick around, and see you next time.
See you next time. Bye now.
Bye.